You're tuned in to the Nonprofit Chatter, brought to you by Nonprofit Pro with our friends at Pursuant. New T and Taylor Shanklin are getting real and sitting down with nonprofit leaders to chatter about issues affecting nonprofits today. Be sure to subscribe to us in your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss these conversations with your nonprofit peers. And check us out on the web at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/nonprofit-chatter.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Nonprofit Chatter podcast hosted by me, New T, Editor-in-Chief of Nonprofit Pro.
And I'm Leah Davenport. I serve as Marketing Manager here at Pursuant, and I'm excited about our guest today, New.
Awesome. So the Nonprofit Chatter will give you an insider's look on the most pressing challenges facing nonprofit leaders and fundraisers today. And we're going to talk about how nonprofits can overcome those challenges. In each episode, we'll engage in invigorating conversation with industry leaders and find out what tools and tactics nonprofits need in their repertoire to make their vision become a reality. All right, so in today's unpredictable climate, we thought it would be timely and necessary to open up a conversation regarding how nonprofits are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. In episode number 17 of the Nonprofit Chatter, we've recruited the Virginia Hospital Center Foundation to share how its fundraising team has responded to the pandemic and what lessons they've learned along the way. With that said, I'm going to pass the torch to you, Leah, to introduce our remarkable guest for today's show.
Hey, thank you, New. As I said earlier, I'm excited about our guest today. We are joined by Marshall Ginn. And Marshall serves at the Virginia Hospital Center Foundation, which from now on I'll refer to as the Foundation. And we are also joined by David Sachetti, who is our one of our awesome strategists here at Pursuant. And David and Marshall work closely on the fundraising strategy for the Foundation. And we're going to be talking today about how the Foundation has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a hospital center foundation, they are right on the forefront. And so I'm really looking forward to some of the insights that we're going to be learning from them today. David, we're excited to have you on the podcast. You and I have worked together at Pursuant for a few years now, and you came on to the Virginia Hospital Center Foundation account recently. Could you tell me a little bit just about yourself and your experience fundraising, and just a little bit about your work with the foundation?
Sure. Thanks, Leah. And I'm really happy to be here and getting the chance to talk with you guys and Marshall today. I have a long history within the nonprofit industry myself. I have a little over 20 years of experience. I started my career up in the Boston area at another agency that worked with nonprofits, and have over the years worked with a large number of national nonprofit organizations on their direct response programs, both mail and digital, and then had the opportunity to move over to the nonprofit side and spent about a decade with a nonprofit working on their marketing, fundraising, and branding before coming back to Pursuant about a little over 3 years ago and back to the agency side. And since I've been with Pursuant, I've been working with a number of organizations on both their digital and mail programs and engaging donors at various levels throughout the giving pyramid, and joined the team leading the strategy for our engagement with the Virginia Hospital Center Foundation at the beginning of this year.
Marshall, could you introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and tell us what's life at the foundation like right now?
Well, thank you, Leah. It's good to be here. I appreciate the chance to talk with our friends at Pursuant and all the help they've been giving us at the foundation. I have actually been in the nonprofit field for a little over 30 years. actually, healthcare philanthropy is pretty new to me. I've been here at Virginia Hospital Center Foundation about 2 years, and but before that, I had an independent consulting practice for about 18 years, and I have worked with local, regional, and national organizations, helping them in fundraising, in good nonprofit management, philanthropy, all kinds of projects from capital campaigns to major gift campaigns. I also have been an active volunteer in the fundraising world. For many years, I was on the board of the AFP Foundation for Philanthropy, so I got to raise money from other fundraisers, which was a fun and interesting challenge. So everyone wants to know how life is over here at Virginia Hospital Center. I will say, in short, it's going well. We are very focused. We are very, very intense. Virginia Hospital Center, has a great plan, and we've been working it. We've taken lots of steps to ensure the safety of our staff and of the patients, and we're doing good. We have adequate supplies. We've had very, very, very few members of the staff actually get sick via exposure from a patient. We've restricted access to the hospital. We're taking temperatures of everyone that walks in the door. So we've been doing all that. We've got social distancing in place, and we're even now beginning to open up the hospital to regular procedures. So folks are now beginning to come back. Again, it's the new normal. People are learning how they have to sit and wear masks when they come into their doctor's appointments, and our doctors are also using telemedicine quite a bit. Lastly, and related really to the conversation we're having today, the community has been incredible with its support and well wishes. Hundreds and hundreds of businesses and individuals and families have been stepping forward with gifts of encouragement, of food and materials. It's just been extraordinary. And the foundation has been the central intake for all donations. So if any member of the community had an interest in supporting the hospital or helping us out, it came to us, and then we would kind of distribute the various requests out to various teams who were handling materials and meals or financial contributions. That was really our job. And it's just been extraordinary. In fact, today, actually, I think they're still outside my office. A local catering company is here delivering about 1,500 meals to hospital staff today. And so there's a whole team of people shuttling meals all over the hospital. So it's been an interesting time, but we're doing okay, and I appreciate your asking, Leah.
Well, that's great, Marshall. It sounds like you guys are doing a really great job kind of navigating this new landscape, rather very unpredictable. So great. So we want to talk about how your team, it reacted so fast when COVID-19 came about. So in working together with Pursuant, what pivots did you make to quickly react to the situation?
Well, we knew we had to pivot, and we knew that we couldn't just operate in the same way. We actually, we had a plan. We were getting ready to launch planning for our annual gala. We had a schedule of mailings that we were working on with Pursuant. So, we did have a plan, but we realized pretty quickly that we had to change our course. And frankly, one of the very first phone calls we made was to Pursuant to see what could we do immediately. And so, we worked with them, and we got an email out. It was pretty towards the end of March, I think, David, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
So we were able to quickly put out the world is changing and the hospital's in the middle of it, and, we need your support right now. And so we launched our COVID-19 appeal pretty darn quickly, and it began to show results, almost immediately. I think, David, you all were pleasantly surprised with how quickly and the good response we had, right?
Yes, it was an opportunity, really with a silver lining in terms of allowing us, the chance to speak to the constituents of the foundation in a timely manner, and express their gratitude and the support that the community had been outpouring and that the hospital center had been receiving. And so it was a good opportunity for us to go back to them to share support and solidarity, and that, you know, Virginia Hospital Center is in this with the community and working together to help support those affected by the pandemic within the community, and also safeguarding the health and well-being of everyone in, you know, the Arlington County area, with you know, continuing to provide support not only on the front lines related to the pandemic, but just with health in general.
Absolutely, and we had to quickly fit this into an existing plan. I mean, I think we had just put out our Doctor's Day appeal, and we were planning another springtime appeal, so we quickly had to fit this in. You know, how quickly could we put together a list and an email text and get it out the door? So it was actually a pretty quick turnaround, so which was helpful. We were able to quickly not only pivot, but actually do the thing we were pivoting to go do. So.
And, you know, it really required us to be very nimble and very flexible. And so, you know, with the way that we approach our work with our clients at Pursuant is very methodical, and, you know, really utilizing, you know, data and analytics to drive all of our decisions. And sometimes, you know, that's a, you know, bit of a regimented process that unfolds over the course of a couple of months as we're planning, you know, campaigns out across, you know, an entire fiscal year. And so this really resulted in us having to have the flexibility not only within the agency at Pursuant to shift and engage our agency resources to support the strategies that we were changing very quickly, but also having Marshall and his team at the foundation be able to work with us and be flexible and respond quickly, and, you know, look at copy and design and materials, and really work together as one cohesive team with the goal of getting communications out as quickly and as effectively as we could.
Absolutely, and it really worked out well. I mean, you know, David's right. We were able to kind of quickly all get on the same page, and it was actually very, very seamless, at least from my perspective. We were able to get this mailing out. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, we actually were planning a springtime appeal, so, you know, we kept on fundraising. We also, you know, we knew we couldn't just stop fundraising. I mean, that's one of the things we certainly have learned anytime big things like this happen in the world, you know, and I'm reminded of, you know, the 9/11 is the thing that keeps getting raised for those of us who've been doing this long enough to remember that. One of the big rules was don't stop fundraising. And so we were able to fit this in, and I think kept it pretty seamlessly, even still adding things as we went along. I mean, we had a regular appeal plan for May, but then Pursuant said, hey, the world is putting out this, you know, Giving Tuesday now, let's add that as a component because we want to take advantage of this opportunity. And so we said, right. Sure. So we ended up having kind of a pre-email push, then the letters, and then a follow-up email push for this spring appeal. And again, I think we've been able to keep it pretty seamless as far as, you know, what our constituents are seeing and getting from us.
Yeah, and what was interesting is that, I have actually been with Pursuant for a little bit over 3 years now, in, the role of Director of Client Strategy. And I've actually only been working with Marshall since the beginning of 2020. I had the foundation has been a longstanding client of Pursuant, but the strategist left the organization, and I took over the mantle of leading fundraising communications in partnership with Marshall, and started in January. And it was trial by fire, and for us to build that cohesive, close, team-oriented relationship very quickly, because we were faced with, not business as usual pretty quickly after we started our relationship. So.
And we haven't stopped moving since you started in January. So
Right.
It's definitely been going pretty quickly. But, and we've been pleased with the results. As you can imagine, we're watching all of the returns, both, how many gifts are coming in and what kind of levels of gifts are coming in via the email, via the springtime appeal. And overall, the story is a good one. I mean, one thing that, it was almost an afterthought for me when we sent out this email appeal, the first immediate one. We put a little teeny piece, not just here, click on this button and you can give, $50 or $100, but I left a little box that said, if you would like to share words of encouragement with the hospital staff, please do so here. And so in addition to the gifts, we got this extraordinary amount of gifts of words of encouragement. In fact, for several weeks, every week I was sending out to the entire hospital staff list of all of these great quotes from people who said, you are our heroes, thank you for being there, congratulations for keeping us safe, all that. I mean, it was extraordinary. So we were getting this as well as financial contributions from this appeal, and it's been extraordinary. So.
Yeah, that's right, Marshall. And I think one of the reasons why our, campaign was so successful is because it demonstrated some of what you were describing. So, we worked so collaboratively with you that you were able to share with us some pretty powerful images of solidarity. So photos, of people who had lawn signs up supporting Virginia Hospital Center, pictures from the testing site for COVID-19 that was set up in Arlington County that we were able to incorporate into our communications, that really kind of, I think, brought it home for those that were receiving these communications, that we're all in this together. And, this is your chance to step up and support your community through this very challenging time. And we did see, Marshall's right, we saw increased open rates to all of our digital communications, increased click-through rates, people engaging with the content, wanting to learn more, and clicking off to the donation page where they could consume, additional content around what the hospital was doing to support the community, and then certainly make a gift. And that, resulted in several pretty substantial gifts from which we wouldn't typically see through a direct response communication, digital communication. And so that really led us to do some long-term, and by long-term, I mean a couple of weeks, thinking of new approaches to how we could build on that success. And that had led to this project that we're currently doing around grateful patients, which Marshall is, leading for the foundation, where we're working together to utilize the data and analytics of the Pursuant Giving DNA platform to take a look at all of the grateful patients that have come through the Virginia Hospital Center in 2018, 2019, and qualify that list to identify the best prospects for not only a general level mailing to acquire them as donors, but a smaller subset of those that show some opportunity for either a mid-level or major gift, that Marshall and his team will follow up on a proposal package that we're developing that he can begin to build relationships with, which will hopefully lead to larger gifts to acquire these grateful patients as donors.
Yeah, it's a big project, and we're just at the beginning of that, and are looking forward to seeing what the results are. I mean, I'm mobilizing members of the staff that we can have these telephone follow-up calls happening in July and August, and probably even into September. We've done a little bit of sort of internal testing, in that we have had a member of the hospital staff who's been working with the foundation, who's actually been calling some of our current donors and reaching out with, we've called them well-checked calls, just to see how they're doing. And overall, everyone is very, very happy to be called. People enjoy the fact, and appreciate rather, the fact that we're reaching out to them and being in touch with them. It's generated new gifts, it's generated goodwill, it's helped us get some updated contact information, which is also useful. And between that and the fact that this COVID-19 appeal that we've been talking about has generated more than 350 first-time gifts to the hospital. And so we're clearly on to something, and we're clearly tapping into something. So I feel very confident about what this big patient outreach mailing and outreach is going to accomplish for us, because we think they're going to respond well. The COVID-19 has actually given us this interesting opportunity. I mean, it's sort of the hook for why are we doing this now? And so, a patient who was here 2 years ago isn't necessarily going to say, why are they reaching out to me? Well, everyone understands, and because the role of the hospital has been front and center in the news, everywhere you look. So I think it's going to feel like a logical outreach. I think folks are going to appreciate the opportunity to, give to their community hospital, and, learn about, we'll use it as a way to communicate things that we're working on. So I think it's going to be a winner all around. I just got to assemble a team of callers for later in the summer. The team over here, we keep joking that, everything is old is new again. I mean, the parts of this feel very retro. The whole idea of a mailing and then a phone bank with people calling. It's like the old-fashioned college annual fun call. What we've learned, and even someone else at Pursuant even said, mail, like paper mail, and telephone calls are now the disruptors.
Right.
Whereas email communication used to be the cutting edge. Now people are at home and they're picking up the phone, so has become the new get them in and catch them in ways we never were able to catch them, so that they're there and want to listen and they want to talk and they're happy to talk to someone. So
yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. And beyond our work with the foundation, with some of my other clients and other Pursuant clients, is we have seen dramatic increases of upwards of 20 to 30% increases with phone campaigns, things like response to broadcast voice messaging, to text messaging, and really to digital and email communications as well, because people are at home. they're bored. They, may have gotten through everything on Netflix that they want to watch, and they're, scrolling through social media, and they're seeing paid ads, and they're seeing, the things that nonprofits are sharing via all of our digital channels, and they're engaging and they're responding, especially if the content is focused and relevant and feels current and doesn't feel tone deaf.
Actually, that's a great point, David. When we were looking at inserting this COVID appeal via email right at the end of whenever it was, the end of March, but we knew we were planning the springtime appeal, we realized we did have to do a little bit of tinkering with the text of that. While we weren't just going to make everything a COVID-19 appeal, we also did not want to seem tone deaf. So we knew, we had to alter even the text of the sort of the upcoming mailings, and even frankly the newsletter, which is going to hit people's mailboxes next month. We had to again insert just enough, COVID-related things so that it looked authentic, it looked timely, and it didn't look like we weren't paying attention to what's going on. So that was a helpful component of it. So
yeah, you're absolutely right, Marshall. It really necessitated us taking a look holistically at the entire fundraising program, the whole direct response program, and looking at other scheduled communications or specific campaigns that we weren't putting back on the shelf and replacing with something specific for COVID, but tweaking them so that they felt appropriate during our current time living through this pandemic together.
And certainly when we look at this big patient outreach, and we're going to possibly be sending letters to 20,000 people or more, while I mentioned earlier that COVID-19 was the rationale, or gave us a clear rationale for why are we calling today, we are now beginning to pivot our general message to look beyond COVID. So the conversation we hope to have with these former patients is, this is why we're talking to you now, but don't forget, you've got this amazing resource, this amazing community hospital that relies on community support. It's right here, and we've got lots going on, and we're getting ready to, we're building a brand new building that's still going on that will open in 2022 on a brand new parking deck that will open next year. So the work goes on, and so we're hoping to then begin to turn that vision slightly further down the road as we start to have conversations with current and former patients, and current and even lapsed donors. So we're continuing to pivot lots of different directions. So.
That's right. Yeah, Marshall, that's a great point, and it really illustrates the fact that everything else that was going on and the need that existed to begin with before the pandemic is still there, right? And I think, hospitals in particular have faced a really tough time through this, not just because they're on the front lines of fighting the pandemic, but that a lot of sources of revenue have decreased dramatically where for other things that are not related to treating patients that are suffering from COVID-19. And spring campaign that Marshall was referring to is actually our annual fund campaign. And so that was the place where we felt like it was very important to remind everyone that, the hospital foundation needs funds to, continue all of the great work that they were advancing and that Marshall had mentioned. And that, we had to almost do, two things at one time, fighting the pandemic and all the costs that incurred with, setting up a drive-through testing facility and retrofitting ICUs and things of that nature.
Exactly, David. And again, looking forward, and I've actually heard from my boss, he's talking to other hospitals and other hospital foundations throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. Most of them, and we are beginning to also turn our attention to the patients who've had to put things on hold. I mean, so unfortunately, because all these hospitals, we've had to, reduce the amount of elective or eliminate elective procedures for quite some time. There are folks who are struggling with, with cancer and orthopedic procedures. I mean, there's a range of things that are going on now that we're going to have to continue to address going forward. I mean, it's almost sort of a second part of the overall conversation that, okay, we're getting back to business, and we need to make sure that we are right there to take care of those patients. I mean, I think the only thing that we didn't stop while we were having the pandemic was moms were still coming here to have babies.
Right.
And that still happened, and there was plenty of protection, and everyone, they still could only have one visitor. In fact, I had one mom say that it was actually sort of relaxing. In fact, they didn't have like the entire family show up in the room. We kind of see the babies, so it was an interesting silver lining for that. But we know that all the hospitals are trying to figure out what's sort of this new next message, because I know that there is going to get to be a little bit of COVID appeal fatigue. I mean, I'm sure everyone, I'm sure a lot of nonprofits are facing that. It works for a while. You want to continue to mention it, but at the same time, it can't be the driving force. I mean, again, I'm reminded of the post 9/11 years where, at a certain point, nonprofits, could no longer keep saying, well, because of 9/11, our budget's gone and we need your help, with funds. So but it's still, you didn't want to completely ignore it, because then, you look tone deaf and unsensitive to the situation. So we're working through that going forward. Frankly, just like I'm hoping that all the nonprofits are doing too. So
I think there were several things that surprised me through this, or that were silver linings to, I guess, having to go through this and deal with this. One of the things that really struck me was the ability for you guys to share real and authentic photographs and images that have just really transformed our digital communications and are going to make an impact on our upcoming communications in the mail around the grateful patient outreach, which we talked about earlier. And that really prompted, you guys to actually, bring in a photographer right now to capture even more authentic imagery that we'll be able to use well beyond the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had to embrace, all kinds of, technology, and again, we're relying so much now on, the visual image is important, because, you're still, even in fundraising, we're still trying to create that experience for a potential or current donor, and we can't do it by having us all in a room together. But we can certainly use, images in a newsletter or a letter. We've been doing weekly WebEx meetings where our chief medical officer and our chief nursing officer have essentially been briefing. It's our donors have really been calling in, but we've had 30, 40, 50 people call in every single week to hear this 30-minute broadcast. And then in June, we're actually doing a hour-and-a-half long stakeholder briefing and virtual tour, where we're going to have someone who's going to be producing it for us. We'll have clips that'll be taped ahead of time. We'll have a live, medical panel, and we'll put all this together to create an experience for what we hope will be a lot of people who will call in and will log into the, to the WebEx platform and see this thing. So, yeah, we're having to learn how to create new kinds of experiences, or authentic experiences, rather, for people to still feel connected to Virginia Hospital Center. And I know, I mean, I will say to talk about silver linings. I was actually speaking to a colleague for an organization in another part of the country that supports one of our national parks. And they have an annual gala that happens in August, which is not going to be able to happen because the park hasn't even quite opened yet. But he realized that this was actually a chance to shake up the model. That this didn't need to be an event that was solely for major donors. They're going to do an appeal and try to invite others at all kinds of giving levels and broaden the number of people who can get involved in this way. So I think people are finding, we here at Virginia Hospital Center and other nonprofits are finding ways to see the silver lining and the opportunity that this has created, and it really is incumbent upon us to capitalize on it and use it and go with it. So
yeah, I agree, Marshall, and I think that it has allowed us the opportunity to you're right, to connect with the sort of general level direct response donor in a way that we haven't in a long time. So,
I agree.
Where you're, having more one-to-one or more personalized communications with a mid-level or major donors, and keeping them, close in terms of relationship, this provided us an opportunity to go to those general level donors to really feel solidarity and that they were, in this with the foundation, and it was a good opportunity to support the work and feel like they're contributing to making their community a safer, healthier place through this pandemic. And that's the true value, I think, to this, that I hope will carry us forward in building, stronger appeals to these, direct mail and direct response digital donors.
Of course, and I think that it's now incumbent upon us, just like, again, all the other nonprofits that are taking this approach, is we now have to steward these new donors. I mean, as all of us know, and whether it's in direct response or any kind of fundraising, getting that second gift in is going to be critical. So it really is now on us to engage these donors. It just reminded me of now not terribly many years ago, remember the ice bucket challenge, national phenomenon. This was an interesting and fun one as opposed to what we're dealing with now, but it caused all this influx of new donors who are stepping up and doing it and dumping ice on their heads and all that. But again, it was how many of those donors were they able to keep and retain. And again, I think we're going to be faced with that. I think we're going to be able to do it, but we have to really focus in our communications, on our outreach, and our stewardship of these donors over the next several months, so that they are ready to give that next gift and be, ongoing supporters, of the hospital. So that's going to be, I think, a critical piece for us going forward. So it's, in fact, I think it's going to be interesting. And David, we're all big into analytics. Is when all this is done, what will this look like on paper? What's the PowerPoint deck going to look like to talk about donor engagement and donor outreach and responses from this part of 2020? It's going to be very interesting, I think.
I think so too. I think it's really going to be interesting to look in the rear view mirror, and even now, with the benefit of a little bit of hindsight, I think I guess my takeaways or the advice that I would give to others is what is the next kind of right thing to do. And I feel like you've got to be authentic, right? And,
absolutely.
And that plays into everything that we've talked about related to the imagery, related to the copy, and how we engaged these individuals. And don't seize up don't stop fundraising, don't stop communicating with your constituents, even if you feel like your mission isn't directly tied to what's happening, with the pandemic specifically, like, it would be for the foundation. People are feeling empathetic right now. People are feeling, that they want an opportunity to support, and help others.
I mean, that's great, David. I think, I think as a kind of a parting shot or, last word, I think it's important that any nonprofit, so anyone listening to this who might be with a small nonprofit or, or even a large nonprofit, I think these are some of the big lessons that, you stay authentic, stay real, be present to your folks, even if things are getting tough, but don't go away, don't stop communicating, and then continue to be nimble, even while you're looking at your current plan, but be flexible. And I think, again, that's any nonprofit, regardless of their size, I think hopefully can follow that advice.
David and Marshall, you have gone through most of the questions that New and I had for you and did it such an organized fashion. I've just been sitting back and enjoying y'all's conversation.
I agree.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
think
like,
we'd be doing this all the time, David and I are still getting used to learning how each other works. I mean, this was fun for me because we were able to kind of, we really did not plan it. We were using the same notes, but we didn't plan it.
Yeah, the one thing that Marshall and I have bonded on is the fact that we could go on and talk about stuff like this for hours.
Yes. I could listen to you guys. Go ahead, New.
I was just going to say the great thing is that you guys play off each other so well, and there's so much like organic chemistry, and it was really fun listening to you guys talk.
Yes, for sure. I think I just have kind of one final kind of wrap up question, and I wanted to touch back on sort of two kind of topics. So you guys already went through this idea of, what is the next right step? How do we continue to steward donors? But something else you said really sparked some thinking for me. And in one of our prep calls, Marshall, you mentioned that you've got a pretty small team at the foundation when it comes to your fundraising. But one of the things that you did in this calling program that you started was leveraging some of the staffers at the hospital who, they might not have as much work to do right now if they're not right in the COVID ward. And there's also all of these elective procedures that aren't happening. So you kind of had this like bank of people who had some time who could be really personal, relevant touch points for your donors. And so that's kind of one sort of takeaway that I see is these are the people that are actually serving the people that you're asking for money. And so that is incredibly powerful when you think about it, because it is one step closer to, that donor experience, is experiencing those people that are serving them. So I'd love for you just to kind of maybe use that as an angle to bring us home, to kind of bring this conversation home. How can nonprofits take some of the things that you guys have learned through this experience and, increase that donor affinity for the organization in these stewardship efforts going forward?
Thank you, Leah. I'm glad you caught that. We ourselves have been so pleasantly surprised, and we have been able to engage other members of the staff, and it's had other benefits that even we didn't plan on. We've got members of our patient experience team who are delighted and they're calling people. We mentioned that we're the central intake for all the donation offers to the hospital, but it's been a lot of other teams that have been, talking to that donor and said, oh, you've got, PPE to donate. Well, let me talk to you about that. Or, gosh, you'd like to develop meals. Let me tell you what our process is for that. It's gotten all these other people actually involved in talking to donors, and that's been extraordinary. But we have currently here in the office right now a member of the radiology staff, and he helps patients when going between one part of the department and the other. And he's called, I want to say like almost 75 different people over the past few weeks. And it's been extraordinary because he can speak directly from his experience working with patients. And then on top of that, when he's gone back out to talk to his colleagues in the hospital, they're like, you're working at the with the foundation. Well, what are they doing over there at the foundation? So he's been educating even our peers about what the foundation does, and that's actually has been very, very helpful. But we do agree. We think that if we can put together a group of folks who, on a part-time basis, are open and ready to be trained to do some of these telephone calls, I know that our donors and these former patients are going to respond well to that. And again, it gives the entire organization an opportunity to learn more about what fundraising is, learn more about what this foundation does, and I think that's going to, again, have long-term payoffs, especially because fundraising can so often look like that secret thing that other department does down the hall and around the corner. We have no idea what happens, but money sometimes flies out of that office, but we don't know what they do. And we're engaging the rest of the staff, and they're going to learn what we do, that we actually do have a plan. We're not making this up as we go along. We've got a structure in place, but we love to involve others in it. So it's been an exciting benefit.
Yeah, and Leah, I'll add to that, and I totally agree with everything that Marshall said. And there are other things that other organizations are doing where, it really comes back to that authenticity, right? And that's really what Marshall was talking about, that authenticity. But you can even do things like, for example, have somebody record a broadcast message that can then be deployed. Someone could record a video, using their smartphone. To just offer sincere thanks, and that can be shared out to constituents, and it doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't need to be like professionally produced, because it takes away from the authenticity. So there's things that you can do even if you can't leverage individuals to do one-to-one outreach. You can do one-to-many that feels like one-to-one.
Well, guys, thank you so much. We're just about out of time for today. So I want to personally thank you for joining us on today's podcast and sharing your experience with, responding to COVID-19.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Agreed. It was my pleasure, and happy to share some of the lessons that we've learned here at Virginia Hospital Center, hopefully with the rest of the nonprofit community. And thank you for putting this podcast on. A great resource for our community. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. So on behalf of Nonprofit Pro and Pursuant, we will see you on the next episode of the Nonprofit Chatter. Have a great day, everybody.